This party started now. Let's get this party started quickly. Let's see if we are live. And we're going to do some social scooping. I'll go through my intro and origin story. Hey, we are live. Social scooping. And I get to drop my volume down here. Grab up my link that we're live here. Drop into the social medias that we're up and running. A-OK. Give me a hot second here to go through all these hoops that we're going to jump through. We'll be on here for a couple hours today. So let me first amuse you with my my intro and my origin story here. So maybe you'll stick around long enough for me to finish clicking buttons and do something visually stimulating for y'all. So my name is Phil Kearney. Hey, this is my stuffed plushie thing doodle. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, I publish them online, and I've been a dungeon master since 1987. I've been making content for the DMsGuild in 5th edition since 2017, and what actually got me started in making content for 5th edition was when the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica setting coincidentally got published. There was a lot of us that thought there was going to be some cool comments from Wizards about like how color mana and the color mana system in general from Magic the Gathering would work in D&D, since Ravnica is a Magic the Gathering setting. That seemed like, see, 3rd edition was amazing because every time they came out with had like a new idea, they'd make an entire book about it with like its own resource system, its own power structure, magic items, feats, monsters, new species origins, backgrounds, as well as full classes and prestige classes, like a 125-page splat book for like any random idea that they had. Like, wouldn't it be cool if instead of magic items you got auras? Cool, that's Book of Incarnate. That's a badass book, by the way. So, like, anytime, wouldn't it be neat if your magic item could gain levels with you, so you didn't have to swap out your gear? You could just make it better. That was back in 3rd edition, like 2000. I want to say 2004. Weapons of Legacy. It was an entire, like, 156-page book. It's massive. Everything from 3rd edition was just massive. And every time a new book got loaded, hey Ross, every time a new book happened in 3rd edition, it immediately expanded the capabilities of the entire game engine, because there's a whole nother gear that you could, like, they would like add an entire lever to your control panel. So you could use that to calibrate and make custom action loops and character concepts that you weren't capable of building before, because they added a whole level of complexity. And after 20 splat books, that got really cumbersome. So in 5th edition, instead, they simplified things. So instead of take an idea and build new mechanics to make it unique and interesting, instead they take an idea of a world or a campaign or a concept, and they reduce it down, they distill it into what is already existing 5e mechanics. World of Ravnica from Magic the Gathering, that's cool. We'll ignore the magic system, we'll ignore color, there's no mana, and instead we'll take the 10 guilds and we'll reimagine them as backgrounds and subclasses and feats for use in the D&D chassis you're familiar with. So that's what got me started in making content, just like making third-party supplements, is the lack of that color mana language. So that spawned a ton of different books. And just to finish the loop here, I'm on the if you're on the X Twitter platform, I'm at Phil Kearney. I always post when I'm live there. You can check into me here, as well as let's press buttons here: like, subscribe, bell icon, get notifications. We're live in the future. All the color mana books that I'm talking about, you can pick up here. The 5 color mana spell point variant rules down here. The Martial Powers playtest content that we are working on today. If you click that, it'll take you to my Patreon. You do not have to be a member of my Patreon to access this page. If you click here, you'll look at us. Hi. Otherwise, it takes you to the Martial Powers document here. For you, it is read only. For the rest of the multiverse, it is, well, for me anyway, I'm the rest of the multiverse. Hey, I'm the DM. Blip, blop, bloop. There you go. This is the full Martial Powers document. It is currently sitting at 119 pages with both the player section mostly complete in alpha stage documentation, and then the DM section at the back end is probably like around, I think, like 50% complete right now. So what we are doing today, to get to the point, is here's this little books I had. They're all in the link down below. Blip. Okay, so as we discussed yesterday, we are continuing our effort in building. We're playtesting the martial power system. We're going to be playtesting level 5 and 6. Intention is for us to have a new team of 5 players assembled and having a session 0 on Monday, July 29th. That is my goal. I think I have people that are already interested in a Monday game. If I have 5 people on my, I'll run a game if I have at least 3 people. And if I have a roster of 5, I'm fine generally with a team of 3 to 5 in any game that I run. Any more than that, and you start to have attention, you start to have neglect issues that you're only getting 1/7 of the time. That's like 17% of the game is on you. That's not enough. With five players, you can keep a high percentile of attention on any given character at a time, whether I'm talking to them or they're describing what they're doing. They have a good chunk of action. Down to 3 people is fantastic. I actually prefer. I often, if it's a cooking game, like if things are just being knocked down, 3 people is excellent because those 3 are getting really good at making decisions amongst each other. 4 is pretty nice because there is a little bit more input and diversity, and they have the added action economy and resources to be able to tackle larger problems. 5 is about as big as you want to get, and it gets complicated at that point moving forward. I'm still fine with 5 because I'm pretty efficient after 37 years, 30, 40, 30, how old am I? I'm 50. Yeah, after 37 years of doing it, I can run a pretty efficient game. So I'm okay with it, but for most people, I really do recommend only 3 or 4 people if you're playing 5th edition. If you're playing a lighter game like Beckme or even Cypher System, your round turnover is much faster, so you can afford to have 5 or even 6 people at your table. But I'm running. Hey, Raul, how you doing? I got your. It's while our realities coincide. Well met, my friend. Let's see. So what are we doing? Okay, great. Yeah. So we're working on. We're developing the next land tile for the Rubble Belt playtest that we're working on. We started this yesterday at lunch. We had about an hour or so of random table generation, but the 3rd and 4th level playtest, we started here, wrecked in the swamp. This is a black tile, it's a swamp, and the goal is to West March. Your goal in your okay, so here's your background real quick, just so everyone's caught up. Your background is you're in a thopter carrier with like maybe 30 people or more on board with you, a small charter flight to get from one side of the world to the other. While you're flying over a rubble belt, and again, a rubble belt are vast swaths of destroyed city because there's 20-mile long worms that'll come to the surface of the planet for mating or whatever. Will run hundreds of miles of track of destruction and then go back down under the earth, leaving these massive sinkholes or like these tunnels into the bowels of the planet, right? These are called world worms. And so a rubble belt is when a worm comes to the surface. A worm is a half-mile wide, 20 miles long. So it comes to the surface and it just decimates any building that it hits. It just kind of like, it just digs through them like it's like the entire, like there's like a mile or 2 of like rock underneath the current city. That's actually old city that's been pressed down into shale. That's what it is. It's shale stone, like compressed oil. Basically, you take like hundreds of miles worth of city and compress it down into like a block that gets carved out like Underdark. And these worms chew through that stuff like a worm through dirt. And so when they come to the surface for whatever they come to the surface for, the buildings that are up there are less dense than the material they're already digging through. So they just basically clock through it like it doesn't even exist. Which means that you have these massive swaths, especially if you get a whole herd of them, like 20 of them. That's going to be a 10-mile wide, probably 1,000-mile long stretch of decimation. Not decimation, utter destruction. Decimate means only to deplete by 10%, but like this like destroys everything. And it takes hundreds of years for the DMsGuild to rebuild the infrastructure to make a place like that suitable for urban living again. So what happens? It gets taken over by nature and it becomes a wilderness environment space of like if you have like this 10-mile wide, 1,000-mile long stretch, and then you've got like 50 miles worth of basically now unpowered and abandoned city block. And then you have another stripe of 10 miles wide, 1,000 miles long, or maybe it's 100 miles wide and like maybe 200 miles long. But these massive swaths of just rubble. And then it gets grown over by nature over the next couple 100 years. It gets reclaimed by all the natural monsters that are in the world. The Gruul the Gruul clans, the green-red guild in Ravnica, the Nature Boys, the eco-terrorists that live off the grid without social security numbers. They hang out in these reclaimed areas, and when society starts to move back in and thinking about re-urbanizing an area, first Selesnya shows up to build farmland out of it, and then Boros moves in to secure a perimeter of safety for then Izzet and Rakdos to then move in and start clearing material out. And then Izzet come in to start rebuilding the infrastructure. And then Orzhov and Azorius do all the paperwork and financing to make the operations work. And it can take hundreds of years for that operation to execute. Meanwhile, there's this conflict at the edges of the Rubble Belt where the Ravnican guilds are trying to creep their way back into nature, and the Gruul clans want to try to push them away. But they'll lose. It's basically 9 against 1. Gruul will always lose. But these worms surface and just dig a chunk out, and then Gruul just migrates over to where the new area is at when one area gets reclaimed by urbanization. But it takes hundreds of years to do this. So, massive swaths of wasteland that becomes basically an uncharted wilderness hexcrawl adventure if you're locked there. So you're flying from one side of the world to the other, your engines go down, your Thopter crashes in a swamp in the middle of the Rubble Belt wastelands. Hundreds of miles between you and a destination, and the closest destination you're aware of is west. So we have a West March campaign where you're marching through a hex crawl campaign setting. The lands are determined by color, which is the nature of Magic the Gathering, the card game, where you gain mana by having different land cards. And the number of land cards you have is generally the amount of mana that you have. You tap the land to be able to activate different color mana that you can then cast spells with. Like mountains are red. Red generally depicts earth stuff, fire, lightning, flashbang, emotions, energetic, reactions, spontaneity, and sheer emotional power. That's red in a nutshell. So when in the game, if you were to tap a mountain or a red mana source, you gain red mana. In D&D, like a fireball is a red spell. So, and it's a 3rd level spell, so you need 3 mana. 1 point needs to be red. So you spend 3 mana, you throw a fireball at 3rd level, Bob's your uncle. Boom, boom, flash, boom, fireball, everyone dies. Cool. So if we're looking at the world, if you're restructuring your Magic to use the color mana system and use the mana points instead of the 8 schools of Magic and spell slots, then you are already building your world to think about land as a color. So we know that mountains are red, water is blue, plains are white, forests are green, and swamps are black. So the team lands in a black tile, and we randomly generate what the lands are off of the 5 colors. And then inside of each tile, so this is each of these little squares here is 10 miles. And this tile here is a 30-mile tile, and it has a 10 by 10 region inside of each. So the team starts in a swamp. They chose, at 3rd level, they chose which tile they wanted to start with, and their general goal is to march westward, out towards either back to society or to somehow in all the rubble find artifacts or equipment that can be repaired or enchanted to be able to send a signal to rescue us. And then they could bring a ship in, and if it was an extended campaign, that ship could wreck and just repopulate your NPC pile, or they actually rescue you and the adventure's over. So if you were to do this as like a short-term campaign, you would specifically have like an old broken down radio tower that you can see is like 20 miles that way. So we just got to go through a couple regions of land to get to that radio tower, make it work, send a signal, defend our space until we get rescued. And then that becomes an adventure. But this is, since we're just doing playtesting, they're just wandering through the wasteland endlessly with the intent of just simply throwing mana around and testing the system to see how it works with different players and options and building different action loops to create different solutions. So we're creating we're basically just building a little like 6-session adventure, like a 20-hour adventure that characters can just kick around and beat up. And by the time we get to the end of that, we'll do level 5 and 6 inside the next tile. And then we'll then be able to move on to the next tile at level 7 and 8. And if for some reason the team is able to conquer the tile early, we'll just build a new tile and throw them into that. There's no end to how many tiles we can have, but we randomly create the environment, the hazards, the enchantments, any artifacts, creatures, boss fights, locations, layers, dungeons. We have a random system generator inside the DM section of the Martial Power playtest content that we're generating all this stuff from. We did 5 sessions back in April, building the first land tile, and now we're moving on to the next land tile. So before we actually dive into that, let me catch up. Yes, red never cries. Yeah, 5 is difficult, but manageable. If I had 6 people that wanted to play, I would break them into 2 teams and just run them on different days. There's no way. Having said that, my work table, the game that I run at lunchtimes at my job, occasionally we actually have 6 people on our roster, but we've never had more than 5 show up at the same time. So, and they have the same rules. We need at least 3 people to play. So anywhere from 3 to 6 people would be fine, but we typically have 3 or 4, which is very manageable for a 1-hour lunch game. Do I spot on the team? Yeah, sure. I haven't officially put the notice out yet, and I will drop that in the Discord as well as my Patreon. It's unlikely that paying Patreons are going to eat all 5 seats, maybe a couple of them, but probably not all 5. I automatically give seats to the $1 subscriber Patreons first over freebies. I then put the word out to the Discord channel, and then if I don't get the 5 seats filled by then, I'll reach out further beyond that to different Discord channels and Facebook groups and Twitter and stuff. So as well as Reddit. So I'm thinking I'm going to be able to get all 5 seats filled between Patreon and my Discord channel, but I'm more than happy to outsource that. And I think I'm scheduled to post the call for participants today. So keep an eye out on my Discord channel and on my Patreon for the call for volunteers. So you've got a seat if you want it. You've shown up consistently and you've shown interest. There's no reason not to. The game is going to be on Monday here in Seattle. It's going to be it'll be at 5 o'clock. We'll be gearing up and actually starting at 5:30, and it will go till 9 o'clock my time, which is midnight on the East Coast. It's expected to be about 3 hours of actual play, with a break in the halfway mark if energy lulls and I need an extra shot of whiskey to keep it going. Otherwise, I don't actually drink whiskey while we play. I don't know why I said that. But and then we'll have some cool down time. So yeah, like maybe a 15-20 minute start at the front end, like a 10-minute break halfway through, and then a half-hour cool down after the 3-hour session ends. So like gear up, shits and giggles, hour and a half of gameplay, quick break, hour and a half of gameplay, half-hour cool down to consider next moves, strategize, as well as debrief and get some feedback about how the session went, both as far as like handling your character as well as how the adventure is going along in general. So that's the ideas. We're going to dive into we're still in the process of randomizing all of the stuff that's going to be in this tile that we're dealing with right now. So we'll get into that, but something else I needed to tend to before then was I wanted to come back and visit the barbarian rage mechanics, because it hasn't been settling with me right, and I wanted to revisit it and just get a new assessment here real quick. So give me a second. Get past the powers. Let me catch up on text over here while I do that. I'll post it after the session ends. When I end session today, I'll jump into the Discord. So like in 2 2 hours or so, 2.5 hours from now, something like that. That's when I'll post it. So you're welcome to respond. First come, first serve. With again $1 Patreons having trump cards to be able to take a seat over somebody that doesn't pay, because Patreon respect. Powers, and then we get through all the powers, and then we get okay. So here's the classes. So barbarian. Okay, so the way that the system works, and folks that have been indoctrinated already know this. We're using a half casting progression system, right? And the number of sustained power is like a concentration self-buff effect that you don't actually have to concentrate on. You have up to, at 17th level, you have up to 5 ranks of power as opposed to the levels of spells. So you have 5 ranks of power at 17th level, and you can sustain a number of ranks of powers cumulative equal to your max rank. So at 17th level, I could have 5 first rank powers that are all sustained at once, or I could have a second rank and a third rank power sustained at once, together in combination. So any class can do that. You just got to dump in the mana and have the space open in your sustained power budget to do so. And if you want to swap it out, you just dismiss the power, and then you spend more mana to fire up something else. Once you've spent the power, it stays on until you are incapacitated. Take a long rest or get hit by a dispel magic. They can't be countered, but you can. But yeah, so they're basically always on. That's a big edge that powers have over spellcasters. Spellcasters have diversity. Martial powers has stability and consistency. So it's a strange mix. All the risk that the martials take is getting hit point damage and facing all the foes and conditions that they're going to get at the front line and skirmishing with creatures. So their powers are stable. The full casters are generally backline. They have low risk of being directly engaged unless something goes wrong at the front line. So their risk is that they have to maintain concentration, so if something does break through and target them, they could lose what they're doing. So there's that balance of risk and reward. The way that currently D&D 5e works is that if you are a Gish fighter with magic, you're not only taking the risk of being on the front line, taking damage, and having to make multiple concentration checks per round, but that stuff could get lost. So you're not only taking hit point damage, but you're also dumping your resources because you're taking damage. That's not a balanced system. That's why we wanted to flip the script on that, so that you have a stable system. You don't have to. You can't be countered. You don't have to worry about material, somatic, or verbal components. It's always obvious that you are a source of magic. There's always a visual, some sort of visual or feeling of power being used, that you're being affected by power, and that unless they're doing something to conceal themselves, you can always tell where that source of power is coming from, just not necessarily know what it actually is. You just know you're being affected by power, and you can see some guy over there is flaring red and black magic, unless he's using like subtle channeling. It costs extra mana to keep the visuals contained inside yourself, so you don't give it away. So sustained effects, you can have up to, at 17th level, you can have up to 5 ranks worth of sustained effects at the same time. There's 2 exceptions to this. The monk, most notably, can have their max rank +1. So at first level, even though they can only sustain first rank powers, because you're a monk, you can sustain 1 plus an extra. Actually, you can't do that until 2nd level, because you wouldn't even have 2 mana as a monk until 2nd level. So you could use both of your mana to turn on 2 first rank powers at first level. The other class that cheats this, which is what we're going to change today actually, the way that it was is that while you're raging, a barbarian would be able to have an additional aura added to their character. But then there's the problem of turning on and off of barbarian rage as something that has to be tracked. And now you have to track how many auras do I actually have up and running on me right now. And that's just an extra level of difficult. Like the monks always works. So it either always works or it doesn't work at all. And so I need to change the rage feature because I don't want to have the barbarian level +1 anymore. It's too clumsy of a mechanic. So let's see, when you go to rage, additional benefits. Starting at 2nd level, while raging, you can sustain multiple powers. The total number of ranks sustained is equal to your max rank gain as barbarian +1. See, I want to get rid of that. I want to replace that. What I want to do is use this 14th level feature, which is at 14th level, you can choose to channel a sustained power as part of the bonus action used to rage. I think because you're going to use a bonus action to rage, and you can sustain a power as either a bonus action or a standard action. Your choice. So if you choose the rage, you could also, as that rage, activate a power if you don't already have one active on yourself. So I like the idea of that better. And that means I'm going to have to, I'm going to reassess whether or not I need a 14th level upgrade or not. Let's see. When using martial powers, rage gains the additional benefit at first level. That's caps at first level. You can choose to channel a sustained power as part of the bonus action used to rage. That's like a lot of added value. So they don't necessarily need that, but I want to give them a kicker, because they don't have a lot going on for themselves until they get everything that everyone else gets at higher levels, like the empowered attacks, swapping action economy, brutal power comes into effect eventually, which is very nice at 9th level. When you make a strength-based attack with advantage while raging, you can forego rolling with advantage to gain 1 temporary point of mana to channel a strike power if you hit. That comes at 9th level. It's basically a free point of mana. If you have advantage, give up the advantage, get a free point of mana. 13th level, you get 2 points of mana. 17th level, you gain 3 points of mana. At 17th level, you could have a total of 5, but you get 3 for free if you're working off of advantage. This is going to allow your barbarian to consistently hit hard over and over again. Let's see, at 9th level, when you make a strength-based attack with advantage while raging, you can forego rolling with advantage to gain 1 temporary point of mana. If this advantage is imposed on your attack after foregoing advantage, the attack cannot benefit from. So if disadvantage is imposed on your attack, so yeah, you can't use this feature if you have disadvantage on your attack, and you're specifically giving up gaining advantage to use it. So conditional. That needs to be tested, and we'll be able to test it later on in the playtest. I don't want to test that. So I don't think we actually need an additional 14th level feature right now. When using martial powers, rage gains additional benefits. At first level, you can choose, when using martial powers, rage gains additional benefit. Okay. And then at 14th level, I'm going to... I don't think it needs anything at 14th level. I really don't. I think that's pretty solid onto itself. I just wanted to clean this up since I was thinking about it. And 9th level, advantage, raging, you can forgo rolling with advantage to gain 1 temporary point of mana to channel a strike power if you hit. 13th and 17th. If disadvantage is imposed on your attack before. Once I clean this up, we'll get into actually building the land crawl. I know that's what I advertised we're going to be doing today, and we will. I just want to, my brain is locking on this alternate class feature right now, so I want to suss that out real quick. If disadvantage is imposed on your attack after foregoing advantage, the attack cannot benefit from this feature. Eight. Nope. This is what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of the disadvantage thing, and we're just going to reduce it down to 2 mana. There you go. So at first level, you can't do this at all. 8 levels later, you get a free point whenever you do. At 17th level, 8 levels later, you get 2 points. That feels a little bit better in curve. And again, you can always take those at 17, so if you want to do a full smite with 15 for 5 mana, you get 2 points for free. You only have to spend 3 out of your own pool. That is added value. I'm good with that. I'm good with this. That now feels simpler. I was adding in the disadvantage thing to help curb the use of 3 free mana every time you attack at 17th level. But at 17th level, 2 extra D10 damage. It's like an extra 10 damage at 17th level. It's not a big issue. And you get the extra condition, but you're going to get that anyway. So I'm going to stand up and sit back down again to settle myself in. But I am very, very happy with this now. So I need to, I don't think my air conditioner's on. I need to turn on my air conditioner. Be right back. And then we'll get to work. Yeah. Sure enough, AC wasn't on. It's starting to warm up around here. All right. Now we got that all. I'm feeling really, really confident about this. I'm looking forward to testing this. This is going to be a lot of fun. 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we'll do 9 and 10. So we'll be able to test this out at the back end. Hey, what's up? Yeah, okay. Looks like I'm current. Let's get into. All right, let's get back into building our hex or tile, as it were. Okay, great. So here's our notes on where we're at so far. Let's see. We're looking at the minions. Let's see. Let's see. Disintegrating aristocratic community. Defensive wards. Requires mana arcana to disarm or get dealt conditions. Unreliable gravity well. Reverse gravity effects. Creatures are, there's a flying Krasis monster. It has Kroll minions, that makes sense. And then carrion crawlers. Also makes sense because of the germination enchantment that's active. When creatures die, a sap-rolling plant creature is created from its gut, which is basically where the carrion crawlers are coming from. And then on the ground, so that's a Simic creature, green-blue. Is that red? Huh. Thinking it needs to. I like these gravity well things. That might make it a fun way to get up and down from floating islands. That's fun. Halcyon Glaze. All monsters have a mirror image effect that can be dispelled. And then down here, Cindervine monster. Okay, so on the ground, so that's so there's okay, right. So just to recap, they went from an elevated blue tile, which means that when it's elevated, it means that so we have elevated, level, and then sunken lands. Sunken lands are like collapsed temples, Underdark Passage, Undercity ruins. So like cavern or like gulches and stuff like that. Stuff that sinks downward into the ground. Then you got level, what's like plains, or like a lake, for instance, would be level ground. A swamp is generally going to be level ground, and then you have elevated areas, which are like mountains, hills, and then like structure, like in Ravnica, there's floating islands. So in the case of a mountain, the terrain, the ground is actually just elevated ground. So there's just that, but that elevated ground is made from a building that's been grown over with vegetation so much that it looks like a hill. So technically, you could find a point, peel it open, and you'll have a dungeon inside of that hill. Everything is literally on top of a dungeon. The entire world is basically a coating of some form of civilization or natural environment that is covering a dungeon. The entire world is a dungeon. So, in the case of an elevated mountain or a hill, if you crack it open, you're basically getting to a high elevated dungeon that could lead infinitely downward. But in the case of floating islands, they're just chunks of rock that are just floating independently above ground. So when you get floating islands as your random result, you actually have to create two environments. You create the environment of the floating islands, and what's the biome like on the floating islands, and then what's the biome and environment like underneath it on the ground. So you have two biomes that you work at the same time. And it just so happened that both of they started in the center elevated blue tile, and then they decided to move catty corner into this next blue tile. Both of them have floating islands. So there you go. That will need to have two environments. So we got the ground, since blue is the environment, the 30-mile tile in general is blue themed. And then inside of each of these 10-mile regions are then further themed. Like this is blue on blue, which means that it could be literally any of the 4 blue guilds, which is Simic, Izzet, Azorius, and Dimir. It could be any of those. So when we randomly rolled, the top in the elevated environment was Simic, and then the flat ground level was Izzet. And then inside of that, we go to our random table of different types of terrain, right? And so what we got on the level Izzet territory are steam vents. And this is next to a flooded, this is basically a flooded plain, right? Like a very shallow lake, like knee deep. It's basically like a bayou, not quite a swamp yet. There's a swamp here in the starting block, and then there's a swamp directly west. So this waterlogged bayou becomes more tepid as you move this way, and it becomes more tepid as you move eastward. So hence the west march, because the swamp sucks. So shallow pool, and then we move down catty corner into this blue tile, and we roll steam vents, which basically means that that narratively we decided descriptively that the still water continues to pour out, and like this is a red territory that's dry land, and then so this water is kind of pooling around here. Like this is like an island sort of thing that's standing out, like swamp here, still water here, still water here, still water here, and then swamp here, and then it levels out into plains, and then there's a depression here, and since it's blue, that's also water. So all this water here that's still and tepid here, still and tepid here, and then it starts to drain off into a sinkhole here, and then you can see here there's also another sinkhole swamp. So the water pours downward into the ground, and then basically bottoms out into a tepid pool. You got another tepid pool over here. So there's like these neat little water lines that are moving throughout the environment that we can just, it's kind of fun. So, and we see that there's a green flatland here, so that shallows out, and then we got a blue flatland over here. It's like this could be shallows as well. It's yeah. What's going on with this color here? Okay, that's white. Plains. But this is elevated plain, which means it might have like water underneath it as well, which would make sense. And there's a lot of water going on around here. But depending on which tile the team goes into, I don't really think about it too much. I just have like a general gist of it. So since this is still water, like shallow lake, but it's that red, we rolled steam vents. So that means that the water here is hot, and some of the hazards is going to be boiling water, right? So let's get back down. We're basically just doing ideation stuff right now. Let's see. Steam vents equals still waters with hot spring geysers. Heating and heating the water, attracting the magmen to populate the area. Let's see, scalding hazards. Let's just create some hazards real quick. Scalding sinkholes deal damage until you climb out underwater. Let's see. What's another one? Scalding sinkholes. Chlorine gas. Noxious gas clouds. Deal. It's kind of like the Volpino Lithari we have in Eberron. Clouds deal sicken creatures within occupying the space within the cloud. in the stinking cloud. Let's see. What else? Flammable water is can create creatures within the area. Those are some real natural steam vent hazards that we can have in a steam vent, like a steam vent geyser swamp. That makes a lot of sense. And so hey, what's up? We're going to be playing on Discord or some sort of Discord is voice only, no camera, and the vocal will be through Discord. And yeah, I have a virtual tabletop setup in Roll20. So I have a pro DM status in or subscription on Roll20. So I'll provide all the tools that you need. I don't expect you guys to use a character sheet on Roll20 at all. It takes forever to fucking do that. You can just throw things down onto a notepad if you want when you're building your characters. But if you want to, I'll provide character sheets for people to load into Roll20 if you want to. You don't have to roll in Roll20. You can just roll at the table. I'm more looking at how the dice interact with the characters, not so much whether people are cheating or not. Obviously, cheaters never win. It's just a playtest. I'm not really sweating it that much anyway. Let's see. Steam vents. Still waters with hot spring geysers, heating the water in areas. Super heating the water with noxious chemicals. Super heating the water with noxious chemicals throughout the region. Hazards, got it. Creatures, magmen hang around geysers. What's some other fun stuff that we could have? Let's see. The last tile, the water, the heat of the water diffuses because you're moving away from the vents. It's still warm towards the southeast side, but it starts to cool off towards the middle. So there was alligators and little crocodilators and aladiles, shambling mounds, ropers, assassin vines, as well as crasis that the team, basically like catfish crasis that the team killed. Now we're looking at magmen. Maybe, oh yeah, steam methods. Those make sense. Steam methods. And let's call them water weirds. That's going to be the three native creatures, type of creatures that we're most likely going to see in this environment, plus and then vent crabs. I'm thinking like deep underwater, where crabs are always crawling around the lava vents, feeding on the phosphorus and stuff that's down there, and so I'm thinking like mutated crabs that scuttle around in the shallow waters here. That can be not a high risk threat unless you run across like a really big one, which is a fun opportunity. That's the general gist of stuff that I think that we're going to see here for creatures that like hanging out in the steam vent waters in general. So that sets up the steam vents. Let's take a look again at the enchantments. I know I have a lot of this stuff written up here again, but I'm reorganizing my thoughts. We're just talking about the ground layer right now. Let's see. Enchantments, creatures deal extra D6 fire damage on hits. cool. Now we want to think about boss equals rogue. Is that equals is that artificer? Outcast. That's right. Outcast artificer is what we have. Interesting, because the Sphinx that's in the first tile, it has it's obviously blue. It bends into the space between Azorius and Azet. Is kind of where it's at. Interesting though, because it had the team track down a crystal in the Krasis lair that led to the team basically destroying the entire Krasis population. But they had to kill the Krasis so they can move the caravan into the space so they have a safe space to sleep. And the Sphinx offered that safety if they could retrieve this basically Blue Mox crystal. And so the team went into the Krasis lair, got the crystal, brought it back, and now the Sphinx is using it to power up the library that it's made its lair in that tile. So in this tile, we're looking at a rival. We're looking at another Izzet Artificer, which makes me think is Sphinx rival. Also looking for artifacts in the area. It's just listed as an artificer, so we're going to have to come up with who is this? who is this? What is this guy all about? And we have minions equal invisible stalkers. Equals low level creatures equals low CR threats, low CR creatures with vanish as a power at will. Hey, what's up? Text. Yeah. 5 p.m. Seattle time. And the first session, we're looking at the first session being on the 29th. And that's strictly a meet and greet, a session 0, build our characters, confirm our the agenda, the objectives of the playtest, protocols, safety words, all that kind of stuff. So get just session 0 stuff, and also opportunity to build characters, provide tokens for their characters for me to load into the VTT and stuff like that. Actual first day of game will be Monday the 5th of August. And we'll run through August probably into the first week of September, and then we'll build another grid for 7th and 8th level characters. That will run mid-September into October, and then I will have the last playtest finish in probably at the beginning of November. And that'll be with the obviously 7, 8, 9, and 10. Those will be with the actual new 2024 rules, which is fantastic. So invisible stalkers, low CR creatures with vanish powers at will. Using stealth gear. So this'll neat. We already rolled up invisible stalkers and the vanish ability for inside of this area. Erupting pipes and corrosive ooze. Grab those. Don't mind if I do. They're not really creatures. Oozes like this are more like hazard, like environmental hazards. Like you step into their space, you take acid damage. That's kind of how they work. So that would be a hazard. And erupting pipe geysers deal fire damage. We already have the flammable water throughout the region. Flooded pipes can be layers for creatures. Yeah, mingled pipes. There we go. Enchantments. Let's see. Thinking things through. Okay, so clearly the main foe in this tile is going to be the outcast artificer. With invisible stalker minions, but I'm not there. He's not necessarily married to the steam vents. It's just this is the region, and since the boss that we're looking at up in Simic Green is potentially non-sentient, just a monster. It could be that. So the only real intelligent opposition that we're going to be dealing with is the artificer. The Krasis, or sorry, the Kroll as Krasis technically have intellect. They could. Thinking about the environment. Okay, cool. Well, let's build the islands then. Ground equals blah. Sky islands. Equals Simic equals aristocratic community. This here. I'm going to separate this here. There. Break these things apart just so I can band them. Sky Island, Simic, aristocratic community. Blue green, blue red. Equals aristocratic community. With abandon, what's the word I'm looking for? So mansions with ruined, with mansion, with what's the word? Why am I sticking on this so badly? With manor and keep ruins atop floating islands connected. Let's see. Perniciously? Is that the right word? Perniciously? Perilously connected. Connected by unstable bridges spanning the air between hazards. Anti-gravity. What am I trying to do? Unstable. Causes occasional shifts, drops, and occasional drops in elevation before rising equals scuttling. Scuttling is when you're, this is a spell jamming term. Scuttling is when you're aboard a structure and that structure gets hit, so that everybody inside basically gets juggled around inside of it. It's basically taking falling damage while you're inside of an object because of the way that you're getting tossed around. And it's generally D6 per 50 feet of distance that you're being juggled around. So if a floating rock is 400 feet off of the ground and it suddenly drops and hits the ground, that's going to be 8d6 damage that everybody and everything that's not basically bolted down or braced for impact is going to get shook around inside. But it could be with the anti-gravity. Let's see. Elevation equals, let's call it D4 plus 1D. Let's call it D4 plus D6 times 100 feet. That's our elevation. So it's going to be anywhere from 200 feet above to 1,000 feet above, like from the bottom. Wavering anti-gravity causes occasional drops in elevation before rising, scuttling every 50 feet. 200 feet, 50 feet equals D6, 50 feet equals D6. Blood falling. Let's see, so wavering anti-gravity. Let's call it with unstable. Unstable hover. And then what's another hazard that we have? Oh yeah, security glyphs. Require 1d4 mana to disarm. 1 mana equals, let's go with, let's see, mana DC. DC 13, 16, 19, 22. There you go. Effects include electric damage, include 1d4 times d6, psychic or lightning damage. Let's see. What's other fun effects? Let's see. Paralysis, lasting 4 hours, 2d 4 hours, and the saving throw to avoid or take half damage on stuff is going to match the amount of mana. The DC here is the disarm DC. How difficult is it to disarm the security perimeter? And it's also the DC that you need to, like, say, avoid being paralyzed or to reduce the damage that you take by half. So that's a consistency. Paralyzed lasting 2 to 4 hours. Let's see. Permanent fairy fire effect requires DC 25 to end. And so we have a damaging effect, we have a paralysis effect, we have a marking effect, so you stand out as a weird target, like, hey, go chase that glowing guy, he's a criminal, that sort of stuff. Levitation, suspend in space. 28 hours, so you can't, so like you get hit by this glyph and now you're just floating in midair. You can't move on your own. And then you can be you can be floating and paralyzed. Oh, that's great. Effects. Let's do that. Roll, choose up to 1d4 effects. Choose or roll. There we go. So now we have the ward effect. So when you're up on these, when you're up in the skylines, this is an aristocratic community where they don't like interlopers. So it's been neglected for God knows how long. There's different security wards that these buildings had at the time that since they've been abandoned, but the magics are still in effect and they've gone rogue. They could even be living spells if you wanted, kind of like maintaining security around a premise. And maybe even occasionally going at war with each other as their security details run into each other's borders at different properties. That would be fun. But yeah, so each area, each island will have a general security effect on it that will be dotting the environment. So they'll need to be like the artificer wants to go up onto the islands to hunt for treasures and stuff. But the wards are fatiguing and he only has so many minions, so it doesn't really want to risk all of those. Plus there's the Krasis up there, and the Krasis are going to have Hex Ward on them. So when these magical effects trigger, they aren't affected by them because they're hex proof. So they just don't get targeted by stuff. So they can exist in all this crap and it doesn't affect them at all. But anyone else that comes around and tries to mess with them, it does. So these Krasis have had very little reason to be concerned about their well-being. Nothing can really mess around with them. They've got fantastic defenses. So we're looking at, so those are the hazards that we're looking at. Security buffs, unstable hovering causes scuttling and free falling. Let's see. We're gonna have little gravity elevators that basically create a column that reverses gravity, so you can float up to one of the islands as just a convenient little trick that the team can find. So you'll be able to have a means of getting up and down, like you can jump off of an island and aim for an anti-gravity field, hit it, slow your descent down, so when you pass through it, you'll then be able to just step out. after free falling, because the reverse effect nullifies the free fall. Let's see. We'll figure out where those are at. Aristocratic community with manor. Okay, so now we're looking at creatures. Thinking, please wait. Maybe, geez, maybe we, okay, yeah. Instead of having, okay, so these, I'm going to take the Kroll and the, ooh. Yeah, carrion crawlers. Hazards, creatures, enchantments, carrion crawlers. Maybe the enchantments should be listed first. Yeah. We'll do it like that. I'm going to do it like that. Security wards. And what was it called? Germination, right. Where we go. Germination. When creature dies, a sap rolling token emerges from corpse 1 round later. 1 round, next round. From corpse next round. Creatures, carrion crawlers equals aged tokens, aged sap rollers. Fox hexproof. The carrion. Okay, so the Crasis. I'm thinking the Crasis like the crabs. I'm starting to think these Kroll that we rolled up here should actually be down here. Vent crabs equals Kroll. They're like medium-sized crab people. Like crab people. They taste like crab, talk like people. That would be our vent crabs. So those are going to be the Kroll. So we're going to have the carrion crawlers, which are germinated sap rolling tokens from creatures that die. And so any creature that dies up there creates a pest. Carrion crawlers, living spells equals free roaming security wards. So there's not a large population of creatures other than the sap rolling token creatures that evolve from here. Okay, so we have a general idea of the environment, and now we're going to go back to our map. And we don't need to look at the overland overall because we know where we're at. We know the tile that we're operating inside of. Again, this tile here is a 10-mile block. This is 10 miles. This whole region, or this whole tile here is 30 miles. So each of these regions inside the tile is a 10-mile space. So we're going to conceal that for now. Here's the 10-mile space that we built. Blue. Let's grab that. Do this again. Blue space. Blue space. This is one of the random things that we did yesterday. Blue space. Blue space. And then we had Now. Back up. Take your time, Timer. Ooh, look at that. Slop. Red. 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 So these are the points. These are the... So using the principles of 5-room dungeons, these are the 5 intercepting points that exist in the structures. I'm going to do a little bit more here. Center that up. Here, 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 here. There. There. This is how the two. So again, we had the random dungeon configurations for like the different types of ways to have rooms arranged and connected to each other in a 5-room dungeon space. 5-room dungeon is a good universal signal that symbol that we can use. Let's conceal that. We don't need that anymore. So this is how the two overlap. The blue being the skyways, and the red being the steam vents. So now I want to Monday the 29th. Right, okay, so we were discussing before, when we cut session last time, we were looking at, I got an hour left, we were looking at these sky bridges having collapsed previously. And thinking things through. I'm just messing around. Okay, cool. So these are... a broken path there. So these are sky bridges that connect different islands, and each one of these squares is a mile. So that is a very, very long bridge to be attempting to hold magic to. Without any kind of maintenance over hundreds of years. So these are broken. I'm thinking like that. Yeah, this one should probably be gone altogether. Let's get rid of that. Just because these are supposed to be all the connections doesn't mean they're all intact. So I can drop this one away. But we can leave this this ramp intact here. It'll be like a ramp. It'll just be a ramp. It'll literally you travel 3 miles and you'll get up into the island. So 3 miles is what 15,000 feet, and this island's like 1,000 feet up. So that's a 1 to 15 ratio. I can't think about what that. I can't visualize it. 1 out of 10. Yeah, 1 in 15. Okay, so that's actually like it'd be like an incline, like probably like this. Let's actually map it out. That's 1,000 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's basically the incline if we start here and have it proceed all the way up 1,000 feet to that island. Like here's the floating island here, and here's the steam vent terrain underneath it. I don't think that would. Boy, that's crazy. That's 1,500 feet. Yeah, that'd be like it'd be like this. And that does not feel natural to me. That's way overextended. There'd be like little floating stones along the way to help prop this up that would have broken off. So we'll want to have this. Probably what would look like a good angle? Maybe like this. That takes it to about there. So we're going to drop this into the water like this, so you can slosh across water to be able to get to that Scott Island. I think I want to break this up into chunks. So let's hew that off. Oops. Let's make a smaller, like an island, like a little floater here, another floater here. I spy with my eye something that is text. Hold on. I can see in a hot second. Transform. 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 I said free transform. Thank you. Down. There we go. What's up? What am I doing right now? So these are the floating islands. We used so when we created this 10-mile space inside of it, so we had the main tile here, right? The general environment, like this is the colorland tile that they were in. We're now moving into this tile here. So since it's an elevated tile terrain, we rolled on the elevated blue land table floating islands. That means that you have an elevated space of floating islands that are connected by skyway bridges, and then there's an environment underneath it on the ground level that the islands are floating above. We rolled randomly that the land, the level part are steam vents. It's a steam vent land, which is technically blue, but it's a Z. red-blue. So the Azet is affecting the land. The land is generally blue, which is water. We already know we have like a knee-deep bayou, like a still river, or like a shallow lake that you can wade through. That has multiple hot springs that are piercing the ground underneath it. That causes some areas of water to be noxious and poisonous. To have gas basically floating over them. That's like a stinking cloud effect. There's geysers that are hot that'll scald and burn you there. And then there's all sorts of corrosive oozes that are underneath the water as well that you could accidentally wade into and take acid damage from. Meanwhile, there's creatures like crabs and oozes and other kind of creatures that are magmen, steam mephits that are enjoying this basically this hot springs resort to them as a hot springs resort to you. It's hostile. So that's going on at the surface level that anyone could walk through, but it sucks. Then you get up into then you get up into the floating islands. So the what we're looking at here is on the ground level, these dots are representing, we don't know what they represent yet, but they represent points of interest. And so for the blue area here above ground, these are where the floating island connections are at. And these crisscrossing, these are the skyway paths that used to exist that would connect one community, one rock to another rock. So like there would have been like a, we use this. Like there would have been a supporting stone floating here, and each of these squares is a mile. So like it would make sense that like every mile of distance between, there would be like a stabilizing island that would be an anchor point, like its own independently floating, but an anchor point nonetheless. So like these would be like little community centers, and basically this would just be a stretch of like bridge walk or like walking alongside a lake, you know, or like a country path sort of thing. But it's a pathway that's suspended in the air by anti-gravity or whatever magic it is that they use. These stones just naturally float, so they suspend bridges between them, bolster them with supportive magic, and then you can have, you know, large populations migrating or moving around back and forth between these islands. As long as you have a stability island every mile, generally these things are stable. Right now we're looking at where did these break down. So there would be like a stability island here and here and here and here, and you can see there should be a connecting line all throughout here. But sometime somewhere in the past X hundreds of years, these destabilized and became unreliable. So section like this one, get that back down to 7. Like this one, it's broken and is slowly drifting off orbit. This one has still an extension of its bridge intact, but is also starting to sway from orbit. We could actually have this one still connected here like that. But this is like this is a ramp that fell away. So now this is a natural ramp that will lead you up to this specific floating island that occupies that mile space. But it's also isolated on its own. You can walk around over here, and let's just have. Let's just have that one gone. And this, okay, so now I'm starting to see what I see. This is these red dots represent the ground, the blue dots represent the floating islands. The floating islands, the larger ones, are intact for themselves, but there's a stretch of sky bridge that's absent here. It's absent here, but there's a point of interest on the ground here. So I'm thinking that the stability, the stabilizing intermediary rocks that they had here lost their power and dropped and created a flat zone here. So this point of interest is actually a toppled tower. That creates a point that, like, this would be knee-deep water area all around here. Because again, looking at the large terrain map, This is going to spill across into water here. It's going to dump into a swamp here, and then it levels out here. So if we're looking at the map here, we would see like ground starting to, let's grab this. Ground would start to stabilize over here as we hit the plains that are to the east, but over here is swamp. So this will, is it directly above? Yeah, it's directly above. So the swamp area is here and sinking into water while there's ground that becomes stable over here. And then south of here is, again, more blue pouring out of here. So like the water bends around in this area. There's, we know we have hills. Is that mountain hills this way? And we have water filtering in from here. So the water filters in from here and dumps into the swamp here where it deepens. So this is like a shallow shelf basically that we're sitting on here. And there, again, there's steam vents that are populating this area that are heating this region. And then we don't know what the water is like. Like we don't know what this tile is, this tile, any of these other tiles are like yet because we haven't explored them. We just know that there's dry land over this way. There's water seepage here. There's land that levels out around here. So this is probably like a natural point of stability around this curve here. Like this becomes stable land. And then we have land over here as well, which is stable. So we have these 2 points of stability here. But in between those, this is all water. Right. Oh yeah, and we have a stable point here as well. So like this is our stability, right? And then we're seeing in between all this stuff where water is seeping either into swamps or is a still water or is a river that flows. Currently, this has all been still water that's slowly filtering into these two swamp areas. As we move further down south here, this continues to stabilize as solid ground like this. And we have solid ground that stabilizes here as well. So like this would be more swamp that spills out over here. We didn't bother with it, but it would be more swamp that spills out over here. So we're starting to see the land start to even out over here. But this water filters in through here. It stabilizes here. This is probably stable land here as well. So these are the land areas that we're looking at that I've highlighted, and then these are all the water areas that I haven't highlighted that are filtering in between all of these things. So the water winds around this way, and the water winds around this way. No, it gets cut off there, but it does wind this way, and then dead ends over here, and then starts to pour in over here, and eventually gets landlocked. So like this is like a little delta system that we have going on here. And then this is a separate, like this would be like a lake sort of environment here that's separated by this risen land, probably cut off by toppling structures. Basically, this probably was once, the entire thing could have just been a large river basin or like a shallow lake environment for many miles, but with buildings toppling in, it caused these breaks in the water flow, creating these little island pockets. So that's the general idea that we're looking at. And so when we're working on this stuff, we're figuring out where is the stability inside all of this stuff. So let's pull those away, undo all of that. But that's the general terrain that we're looking at. So now that we have that general terrain language, we're looking at how would these, once we understand how these towers are in relation to each other, what's still stable about them and what's fallen or floated away, we'll have an idea of where our different locations are at that the team can potentially engage in for different dungeons and stuff in the environment. So we're basically setting up each of these dots or points of interest that the characters can go to and explore and fuck around and throw mana at stuff. This will be basically like open lake. This will be open lake all throughout here. These are just points that are ground that sits up above the water line where you can walk on dry land. So they become natural pathways for people that don't want to swim around in corrosive muck. Go figure. And then once you get onto the sky islands, you're hundreds or 1,000 some odd feet above the ground. hanging out in these islands where there's living spells and enchantments and monsters running around up there. But on the surface here, there's not much valuable resources that could be gathered. If there's any treasure or things that are lootable, they're going to be up in the Sky Islands where they're relatively untouched. The only problem is that these enchantments go rogue over time, and you can't trust their stability. But they're not on the ground where the majority of the monsters are at. Up here, you just have to deal with magical traps and living spells. Down here, there's all sorts of monsters and then natural water hazards and stuff like that you have to deal with. So the outcast artificer that's running around in this area is most likely hanging out in these sky towers trying to find some sort of treasure or something, maybe. Might be looking for the same thing that the Sphinx was looking for, and the Sphinx found it first. So we're figuring out how to get to the islands, where's the natural connecting points, what's the topography of the place looking like, like the terrain of it. And then once we have those points defined, we can start laying in what are the points of interest, like what type of spaces do each of these things occupy, like what are they in the 5-room dungeon array. So I'm going to finish figuring this out. I think I'm going to do this. There would be one there, but I'm going to break that away. Break that away. Let's break that away. Yeah, I'm going to make that another on-ramp. Skybridge that toppled that can now be used as a ramp. We have one there, and we have one here, so you can access this one easily. You can access this one easily. Let's leave this skyway intact here. I like that one there a lot. That broke away. We're gonna break this one off here. This is the environment. There. So this is a hub here. Here, 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 and here, and then over here. And I'm going to get rid of these. Just open this space up a little bit more. So it's like that, and that's like that. And that's like... Ooh, here's another topple point. Nice. Another on-ramp here. Ramps. Get up onto the island. Onto the island here. There's a few 100-foot gap. You're going to be 5th level, so you're going to have some aerial capability. You aren't going to have full flight. But you should be able to get enough bounce to be able to the bridge a gap like that. That's roughly like a 300-foot gap. There should be resources available to your characters to be able to span things like that. Let's take a look real quick. Hold on. Tax, what's up? Sorry for no. It's you don't owe me anything, man. It's I'm the one that's not being very entertaining. This is a good example of like actual work. Even though it's a creative, fun experience of being able to create things, it's actually work. So it's not as light and as fluid in speaking as I normally would be, because I have to actually think about what I'm doing. Artwork I don't have to think about. The pixels just push themselves. I'm just there for the ride with you. Cloud Strider, there you go. When this power is sustained, you can fly using your walking speed. You must end your turn standing on a surface that will support you, or the power ends. When the power ends, you benefit from the effect of a Featherfall spell. So you could use Cloud Strider to basically jump off of here. Is a 300-foot span, right? There's no way that your character can just jump 300 feet. But these things are also, like, really big. So it takes a full round for you to descend, say 500 feet, not take any damage. And so you could basically jump, and then when your Cloud Strider spell runs out, your Featherfall kicks in, and then you can just basically curve out and then grab onto the side or bottom of this floating support, and then climb your way up onto the top of the structure, and then you're gold. You can just run around here, and you can do a similar Cloud Stride jump, and then you're on stable. And then you're on stable island, stable bridge again, and then you can fuck around over here, and then kick around over here, and then again here's the onboarding ramp. So you wouldn't have to mess around with all that stuff. You could just onboard ramp here, or you could do we have an onboard ramp here? We should probably put an onboard ramp here too for fun. But that's off in the in the submerged area, so you'll have to. I'm gonna, I think, put a red dot at the end of this to signify surface access. But all these others break off. They're just it's just a cliff. It just, you know, you just fall right off of it. These are these with the red tips are ramps into to the surface level. So we have onboarding ramps to get you into this area. And then we have an onboarding ramp here as well. So let's go look at structure over here. Challenges, dungeons, enchantments. Where's my 5-room dungeon themes? Michael Black, elevation, terrain, segments, land types. Okay, so let's go martial powers, and let's get into our playtest. Map key. That is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for my 5-room dungeon list. So hold on. I thought it was on here, but alas, it isn't. So let's back out of this, and then let's go to red first region center. Scaling Cascades, Pixies, Conflict, Pixies, Spellcasting. 5-room dungeon. All right, I'm just gonna have to wing it. Just gonna have to wing it. So here we go, winging. 5-room dungeon. So let's go back here up to the top just to keep rambling about stuff. 5-room dungeon. There is the treasure room. There's the boss. There's a guardian. There's a trick puzzle, And there's a trap. That's the five. That's the five basic. The five basic things that exist inside of a dungeon space. You got a space that has treasure to gain. You have a boss fight like lair. There's a guardian that prevents access to a location. There's tricks and puzzles that challenge your ability to access a region. And then there's traps that punish you for accessing a region. So those are basically the five things that exist. And then so when we're looking, when I'm looking at a 5-room dungeon and we're going about this style of building an environment, we have 5 zones, both elevated as well as at the ground level, and they are each going to have their own theme built to them: treasure, boss, guardian, trick, puzzle, and traps. So it now becomes our task to figure out what each one of these things are. So there. We're going to go back to here. We're going to use black. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. Damn it, Kearney. 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we want to start arranging each of these. We'll just do a. Let's go with treasure. I'm just gonna roll. I'll just roll a d6 first. I got a 4, so treasure is going to be 4, and then 5. 1, 2, 3. So treasure is here. A boss fight of some sort is here. There's a guardian of some sort here. Tricks and puzzles here. And then traps here. Theme. Blue, red. Red, 1 to 4. Treasure equals 2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So traps here. Treasure here. A boss of some sort here. A guardian of some sort here. Wrong window, Kearney. And then a trick of puzzle of some sort here. It's not like you start messing around with this. God, sleepy. Be welcome. Sleep as much as you want. If I bore you to sleep, then you are welcome. Rest well. It's 11 o'clock. I've still got about a half hour left today. And we'll continue this design on Tuesday and Friday next week. And then the 29th will be Monday. We'll do our session 0. And at that point, we'll probably do this next Saturday as well. And then we'll have, that'll be the 27th. And then, 27th. And then we'll have our session 0 on the 29th. And then on the 30th, I'll have another episode of this, and then that Friday, another episode, and then if I need to, that Saturday as well to get this all fleshed out and ready to go for us to actually start slinging mana on the 5th. So now we want to start figuring out the themes for each of these things. Sky Islands, Germination, Carrion Crawlers, Living Spells, Free roaming security. Ooh. Okay. I know that's what we can do. Hold on. Germination. When creatures die, sacrificing token emerges from corpse next round. And you got creatures, carrying crawlers, living spells. Security wards. Let's see. Area. Theme. 1. It is Guardian. Equals source of living spells. Can disabling Guardian enchantment ends living spells. Ends them, period. Area 2. Tricks and puzzles. Puzzle equals, what's the puzzle here? 1, 2. Where's the treasure at? Trap is 3. Trap equals. Oh, neat. Security. System override. Disabling. Enchantment. Ends. Wards. Cool. So this is gonna have like a lot of disarming. There's the living spells and the active wards in the environment. You can disable the active wards. If you find the source of the enchantment, you can disable it or like shut it down with mana. There's another for all the wards that are protecting these buildings. It also has a source. If you can find that, you can shut it down, which means they'll have their own individual micro dungeons for you to explore once you shut them down. Then the whole area will become much safer. That could be what that artificer is currently trying to do, is find a way to shut down the enchantments. Let's go to 4 and then 5. Treasure and boss. Where's 4 and 5? Interesting. Okay, so the boss layer is way off here, furthest south and closest to the center of the tile. So we're going to make that boss layer equals flying Krasis perch. And so we'll have to design the flying Krasis. What is going on with my text? There we go. Something weird. Okay, so basically we have a bunch of steam vent stuff and critters like small sized crabs, right? Like the size of dogs that are running around these steam vents and stuff. Magmen aren't very edible. There's also crawfish and stuff like that. So a bird type creature, a flying creature that would be roosted up here would be able to easily come along into the steam vent region here. These points are representing where steam vents are at specifically. And so that helps set things up. But that also gives a point of reference for this boss, the winged Krasis, targeting all this stuff. And there's no enchantments that directly affect this. And it's an onboarding ramp to the rest of the facilities. So that's fun. This thing will kick out, come by, grab up a crab that's hanging out of steam vents, fly off with it, come back later for another one. So we're looking at a lot of crabs in the area, crawfish, catfish sort of things. Maybe there's some random beast type stuff that we can drop in here, like skittergators, for example, would be a fun thing to have in here. Oh my god, skittergators would be a lot of fun. Let's see. Number 4 is treasure. It can't be. It can be traditional treasure. Basically, it's the point of interest. Let's see. So that would be So this would be. Thank you. This is my last tournament burst. Treasure would be. Is that research data center? No, not is that. It'd be Cynic. Okay, so the treasure is that you can find mana crystals, and mana crystals are like mana potions. They're mox crystals. Artificers can just create them, but if you can find one, generally they hold 1 to 4 points depending on the tier of the characters and the potency of the items. So these would be 1 point mana crystals that you'll be able to basically as an object interaction tap and then pull the mana and then be able to use it for yourself. And then on top of that is research information that you would then have to use mana to power up the system to be able to access the archives like a computer system. There has to be power going into it for the information to flow, and that might be what the outcast artificer is sitting here doing. It's mostly going to be biologically based stuff. That makes sense, but we don't know yet what it's actually looking for or why. We just know that's what it does. Hey, Key Inc. Is that it? I'm horrible with names. I'm Phil. Hi. So number 4, yeah, that's the data center. So that's easily accessed. So let's go down to area 4, and now that we have these, I think I want to label these real quick just to make it easy for us to keep in mind. I don't know what the puzzle is yet, but we'll figure it out. Puzzle, Guardian, using the theory of 5-room dungeon. That's how we're randomly arranging these things and seeing what we can get. Boss, lair, and we know that there's it'll probably end up being like a wyvern or something like that. as the flying Krasis. This is the treasure. Treasure. And this is the trap. And instead of this being a trap, like if we were building a traditional 5-room dungeon, here's the design theory around 5-room dungeons, which is a great tool to implement. Here's all the different likely combinations you can think of for arranging a 5-room dungeon with connecting tunnels. There's 5 general themes to the room that you want to have throughout here to design your dungeon. And those themes are, again, is Guardian, which prevents access to other areas of the dungeon. Puzzles, which is while you're in that area of the dungeon, you're being challenged with something that can either grant you a reward or access to additional rooms. There's the trap, which is while you're attempting to traverse this space to other dungeon rooms, you are punished for doing so with a trap. So the Guardian blocks you from accessing it. The trap punishes you for attempting to access it. The treasure, the puzzle challenges you while you're in that space. You're allowed in, but you don't necessarily, it might reveal a treasure, it might reveal a creature, it might reveal an additional corridor of movement, or it could reveal a hidden path to another part of the dungeon, but it's a puzzle. It could also just be information, an information-based treasure. The trap, like I said, it punishes you for entering an area. And then the treasure is what you're there for, either like an actual treasure trove or a piece of information, or maybe like a hostage or something like that you're trying to rescue, whatever. It's the incentive, it's the goal for being there. And then the boss lair is like the big bad, or it could also be like the lair where all the enemies are, which could include the guardian that you encountered earlier, would be a part of this boss lair. So taking those 5 general ideas, we then randomly arrange inside. We randomly rolled a dungeon, and since we have the floating islands in blue, and we have steam vent locations in red, and the rest of the tile is basically knee-deep water of different, hotter when you're near the steam vents, and it cools off as you move further away from it. So we have creatures that are going to exist in the heat and the steam vent, like steam mephits, mutated chol, stuff like that. And then so that's on the ground level or on the water level. And then once we get up into the floating islands, we have different themes for each. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At this upper level, it's not like there's this is way off on its own, right? This tower number 5, and it's not even connected to any other towers. How would that be a trap? In this instance, it's not a trap, but like we discussed earlier on, these are aristocratic communities full of manors, townhomes, keeps, mansions, and they all have their own security systems. So the idea here in this one is, when we're talking about a trap, we already have a slew of different types of ward effects that are active right now, dealing psychic damage or lightning damage, paralyzing people, lining them with fairy fire to be easily marked, causing them to float in space so they can't run away, and the different DCs and difficulties to overcome these individual wards on the building per building basis to access and infiltrate those spaces. Or the way that we have it themed right now is the entire power structure for this entire community. The security system is held in this tower on its own, and it's often isolated on its own, so you're gonna have to specifically seek this out. But until you disable, there'll be a little, like a 5-room micro dungeon, and the treasure in this micro dungeon would be the control panel to shut down the security system that's affecting this entire tile space. Similarly, we had already determined earlier on that there's a guardian here, which are basically these warding spells that are on the buildings over time. They've peeled off of their structure, and they've become free-floating wards that are like living spells that are skulking between the different mansions and manors and keeps, looking for people that don't belong there to attack with its guardian abilities. Like, if it hits you, it deals psychic or lightning damage. It could paralyze you. If it hits you, it highlights you, making it easier to hit. If it hits you, it can cause you to sit and float in space. So now you're basically restrained and unable to move because you're like 2 feet off the ground. It has to be dispelled, or you have to wait for it to wear off. So, but these are just roaming spells. And so the guardian area here is where these spells are originating from. So if you can shut down the security system that's generating these living spells, then you can shut off the guardians. So you'll have guardians over here and over here and here and here. And until you disable the guardians, they're going to be just basically magic monsters that are chasing your characters up here. And then each building has its own ward effect that's stationary, that targets anyone that comes near it, like a typical trap would. And then you can disable all the traps by coming over here and disabling that. I don't mind, like for example, Rel's going to play in the playtest. So I don't mind him being here because this is the 5th and 6th level playtest. In level 3 and 4 in the previous playtesting in the adjacent tile before they move into this area, the team befriended a Sphinx that's been searching these areas for a long time for an artifact that the team helped them find at 4th level during the last playtest, and that Sphinx has been feeding information. So the Sphinx knows about these structures. Maybe not so well about the ground, but these floating islands, it's come by and poked around all these areas, and it didn't have what he wanted, so he left them, but he gained information about this place. So he can just feed your characters information. It's like, well, if we're going to fuck around up here, the Guardian and the trap zones are things that you might want to prioritize to be able to disable, so it makes it easier for you to traverse the rest of this environment. So those could be objectives that you guys decide to start with, because the Sphinx told you, I know because of the way that I can read the magic in the grid, I know that's where the magic is routing and going. It's like Tesla. You know, like Tesla, he would like basically put energy in the area that the antennas would basically pull that energy from to power themselves. This is the generator that's providing the magical structures for all the wards to continue to sustain themselves on the buildings. And similarly, there's an antenna structure here that's causing the living spells to be able to roam around. Disable those, all the traps and all the living spells are disabled. You'd still have the wyvern over here that goes down. So like anytime you're on the ground and you're fucking around, there's a chance that the wyvern could attack you, because it's the actual, like, it's the monster boss. It's the apex predator inside this 10 mile, and it's 10 mile. Each of these squares is a mile. So this 10 by 10 square space, this wyvern is the apex predator in that area. But the actual boss, the other boss, quote unquote, that's in the area is a rogue artificer that's looking for information in here. So maybe it's not so much an Inzet artificer, maybe it's a cynic artificer that's here researching its own information, that was maybe competing with the Sphinx in the prior tile, and it had it was basically laying low until it went away. When the team shows up, it might attempt to negotiate with the team. Hey, I want you to help me disable these things and get access to this place, and we'll split any loot, but I'm looking for this specific piece of information. Are you willing to help me? And the answer could be yes or no, depending on how your team wants to play. But if you do, he's basically providing you with quests, and it can provide you with basic information about the hex, about the region if you want as well. Hey, what's up? I just came in to do a follow back. Hey, all right on, man. Hope the creative process goes well. Cheers to you too. Thanks a lot. So yeah, that's the general idea there. So this is the Wyvern's Lair, and then this is the treasure area where the artificer is actually looking for the information that he needs. But again, wards and stuff is causing a problem for him. I don't know what the puzzle in the area is yet, so I'm just gonna do some random die rolling. I use an oracle system. If you haven't heard of oracles, it's basically you just roll a die to tell you an answer and stuff. There's a lot of different variations, but the one that I like the most is the two 6-sided dice. Or if you would rather, you can use. If I can find it, come on, buddy. Thank you. Or you can use two tensors instead, right? So the way that it works is you roll both. You ask a question. The question is yes or no. And so when I roll a die, in this instance, I rolled a 4. So a yes is 4 or above. So I'm going to roll the other die. I rolled a 1. So the answer is no. If the question is, whatever question I pose in the form of a yes or no question, 4 or above is a yes, and I rolled a 1. So you can do fun combinations like this. Like if the question is a 1, then the answer, it's impossible for the answer not to be yes. It is 100% because I can't roll below a 1. So the result equals the die roll or better. So on a roll, if the question is 1, the answer is absolutely hell yes no matter what. But if I also rolled a 1, if it was absolutely certain that this is a thing, because the question was a 1, but the answer was a 1, it means yes, but it almost wasn't. So, and conversely, if the question is a 6, then it's almost like it's highly unlikely, because the only way the answer can be yes is if I also roll a 6 on the answer die. So if I happen to roll a 6 on the answer die, then despite all odds, the answer is yes. And these little cues, that the difference between the die results gives you an idea of severity. Like if it's absolutely, like if there's like absolutely no chance the answer is yes, and you roll a 1 as your answer, not only is the answer not yes, it is absolutely fucking never yes. Because the absolute worst yes result was against the absolute worst question result. You see how that works? Like if I rolled a 3 for the question, and then I rolled a 4, it's like, it's 50-50, it's kind of ish-ish. and then I roll a 3 or 4 as my result, like I roll a 3 as my result on it, it's like, yeah, it's a mid question, it's a mid answer. There's nothing particularly interesting about it. But like if I rolled a 6, if it was like a 3, it's like, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But then my answer is a 6. It's like, absolutely yes. And so it's that emphasis on the absolute yes, absolute no, yes, but barely no, but barely not no. Like it's these little flavored, the differences in the D6, or if you want to go more radical with a D10s instead, then it's that difference between the die results that gives you the severity of your answer. And I've been using this Oracle system forever. So as a DM, I only need to know roughly what's going on inside an adventure, kind of what the terrain is, kind of what some general challenges are, who are the major players in the area, what are their goals. And that's basically all you really need to know. And then from there, you're just playing jazz. So what'll happen is the characters will ask a question that it would have been impossible for me to have enough prep for to be able to provide an answer off the cuff. I've been doing this for a long time, so I have a good general idea that sounds like a sensible yes answer. So yeah, I think that would make sense, yes. Or no, but here's why. And this isn't like, can I do something? This is, is this a true statement? Like asking like, does it seem like this guy is familiar, like is acting like he's more, like, does this guy have familiarity with the library that we're exploring right now? And the answer is gonna either be yes or no. And I will either know because of who the character is and the circumstances, yeah, he has familiarity with the area, or no, this is the first time he's been in here. But if I don't really care, I'll just throw dice for an answer. I rolled a 2 and a 2. So it's highly likely that he's been here before, because it's a 2 out of 6 is a high likelihood. But I only rolled a 2, which means it's highly likely that he's poked around here, but he hasn't done it a lot. Why? Because if it was obvious that he would come here with a 2, and he rolled a 6, and obviously he's come here before. Yeah, he's been here a number of times. But even though it's obvious that he would be in this library, like we're looking at Area 4 right now, it would be like there's an on-ramp. It's easy. It's in stable land. It's an obvious location to ramp up to get to. It's obvious that he would have explored this space already. But I only got a result of 2, so he hasn't. Why? That's how those Oracle dice work together. It creates a varying degree of maybe-ishness. So we know that the treasure is here. This is the center of like what you're actually looking for. We already determined that. But the researcher that's here hasn't explored it. Why? Well, the obvious answer to that is going to be there's some really fucking nasty stuff there that he wants you to shut down the guardians, and he wants you to shut down the traps too. So apparently this place is just crawling with horrible magic that's gonna fuck you up. And probably has a bunch of carrion crawlers that are immune to those effects that are here too. It's like, yeah, this place is crawling with death. I can't go up, I can't safely go up there with the resources that I have. I can skulk around, but I can't spend any time there because I'm gonna get caught out. So I need to make the place stable, and I need your help to do that. So what's the puzzle that we could possibly come up with? So I'm using Oracle dice right now to lean into what is the puzzle. Is the puzzle magic related? 6 and 6. So it is highly unlikely that the area is magically based, but I rolled a 6. So luck beyond luck, this is another magical enchantment area that needs to be addressed. Okay, I just had the idea that just popped into my head is maybe this puzzle actually has some sort of control over the steam vents in the area on the ground. And it's just been left on for centuries. So an entire biome has grown around these steam vents, basically spewing chemicals into the area. Is that the case? I roll my dice. It was a 1 and a 6. When I roll these things, here, fucking craziness. You see that shit? I tell you, it's fucking crazy. So when I roll this, the one in the... I just lost my dice. Damn it. Hold on. This one went into my shoe. I swear to you, I rolled 1 and 6. So the answer is absolutely yes. And then I rolled a 6 as my affirmation. Like, the question is this steam vent? And it's like, there's no chance these aren't steam vents. And then I roll a 6. It means absolutely steam vents. So I think what I want to do is I think I want to cheat a little bit. My heart's telling me to be a cheating liar, so that's what I'm going to be. Give me a second here. I want to move this cloud structure. I fucking love this. We're gonna do this. I can't believe I didn't see it before, but I just saw it. There. Alright, that's supposed to be my timer, but I'm on a tear here real quick, so I want to clean this up before we bounce. I'm going to take this, I'm going to tear that out into a separate layer. I'm going to take this here. I'm going to do some rearranging real quick to puzzle. Boss. Guardian. And we're gonna move the treasure to here. Okay, so the puzzle here now becomes a march down, and then what was underneath that on area 4 on red? Let's do it like this: 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do it that way instead, so that the tricks and puzzles line up with each other. Just executive decision. So this is a massive column, and it's a massive gear complex. So when we're looking at just the ground, this is the major steam exchange. This is what's powering all of this structure. And the controls for it is actually in the elevated area, which you can get to with this collapsed bridge over here. And it, or you could just climb, because it's basically a tower structure. You can just climb up this. But if you disable it, it kills all the steam in all the areas. So the blue dot are the floating islands, but the red ones are steam vent points. The red ones are on the ground level because the whole tile is blue. The elevated area is green-blue because that's what we rolled. And then the ground level is red-blue. Red-blue is Azet. So we rolled on the Azet ground level red table. For land types, let's go to red flat. Blue flat is a region, steam vents, which is red. Erupting pipe geysers and corrosive oozes. So that's steam vents. And then if you go down here to red, flat, you also see steam vents blue. So that's what the ground level is, steam vents. So underneath the ground, the whole area is flooded currently because of water. But underneath that layer this is a steam vent region. Like, that was the infrastructure purpose of this area originally, was to maintain steam power throughout the region. It's still operational off of like some sort of geostructure underneath. But it only now affects this one tile. The larger structure has been cut off from access because it's been torn apart. But the machinery still works, so it's still pulling steam from underneath, and now it's just diffusing into this area, causing the chemicals from the depths to mix with the steam to poison this whole area, like to make corrosive water, like a really bad pH. And so the floating islands are above these. And in this instance, this steam, this point here, we're now having the island line up underneath a point of interest in the steam vents, And so we had a puzzle that we needed to figure out. So the dice just told me the puzzle is figuring out that you can disable the steam vent array at the ground level by climbing up into this tower and then either using mana or disabling skill checks to basically turn off the pipe supply to shut down all the steam vents, which would cause a disaster amongst all the creatures at the ground level. The steam efforts would no longer be entertained with this place, so they're just going to be up and running around, being uppity and causing you trouble. The crabs, their food supply is about to run out because the steam isn't there, so they can't feed off of the chemicals from it. The magmen lose their source of heat, so they're no longer entertained, so they're just going to start tearing stuff up. So if the team turns off the steam vents, all the creatures that exist around these steam vents, their entire ecosystem gets disrupted and becomes hostile. So once you climb down, and again, when we leave this tile to move forward, we started in this tile here. And then we decided to move into this tile. If you turn off the steam vents, this becomes a hostile area to you. And then so when you leave, you have to make this area stable and safe for you to move your caravan from this tile, because there's a bunch of NPCs that you're basically scouting ahead to forge a path that's safe for all of the non-combatant NPCs to travel behind you in a very large-scale escort mission. You're creating safe paths of travel to move forward. So if you destabilize and make the entire region hostile because you kill the steam, it's going to be difficult to then move your caravan into this area as you're moving through the rubble belt. Like if you fuck this area up, your next option is to either backtrack and now go into plains over here and then run into a swamp and then run into a sinkhole, so you're going to have to kind of skirt the swamp and then head this way. Or you just keep the area stable, don't fuck with the steam vents, or hope the steam vents don't get fucked with, and then move off into this area and then around, because we're basically trying to get around the swamp. Because the swamp's going to be horrible. It's going to be full of like undead and life-draining stuff, and who knows what else is going to be in there. Bad news. So you want to skirt around the swamp, which is what the team decided to do, so they can continue westward. If you destabilize this area by turning off the steam vents, or if over the course of the adventure the steam vents get turned off, then the entire ground level of this terrain is going to become dangerous for your escort, for your caravan to come through. So that's what we're trying to do, is create stable areas in each of these tiles for the caravan to be able to traverse through. If you try to bring your caravan into an area that's not stable yet, you're going to have combat encounters every night. No one's going to be able to get the benefit of a long rest, because you're going to be harassed by monsters throughout the night that want to eat you or steal your resources. So that's what we're working on. That's why we want to, like, you can't just traverse skyscapes, skylanes, because it ends here. You're gonna have to drop back down to the surface level and be able to traverse from there. But there's things that you can do up here to potentially stabilize. Like, you're gonna want to take out the boss, because that wyvern is going to absolutely be a threat to your team. If you try to move your caravan in here, that boss is going to come by and eat your team. So you got to get rid of the boss. And to be able to get rid of and the boss, of course, has hexproof, because that's one of the conditions of this tile, is the monsters have hexproof. So this boss isn't affected by the roaming spells and enchantments up here at all. It just ignores them. Flies down, eats creatures, brings them back up. Bob's your uncle. You are going to become that creature down here. If you turn off the steam vent, but that's basically what this puzzle is the option or the threat of the steam vents being turned off. So there you go. So we moved that there. We moved the treasures to here, and there's no connection point here. So this is another point of interest. That point of interest becomes this became a trap. So there's a trap underneath the treasure, and we rolled earlier a 6-on-6 or a 1-and-6. It should be obvious that the it was a 2-and-a-2. It should be obvious that the artificer has explored this area. This is where the treasure trove is at. This is where all the research information he wants is at. It should be obvious that he's gotten there, but he hasn't yet. Why? Because underneath it, right next to it, on the red zone, is a trap. So we have to figure out what that trap is. So now we've got the general idea of what each representation on these sky towers, these sky islands are, like what their core tenet is, their major descriptor, why they're there. And now on the ground level, we're going to do the same thing. We know that number 2 is the puzzle. We know that number 1 is a trap, so we can just feed that information in here now. Trap. So getting to this could be dangerous because there's horrible things here. And we know that number 3 is guardian. We number 4 and number 5. Number 4 is treasure. But we don't know what the treasure is yet. And number 5 is, oh no, number 4 is boss, and number 5 is treasure. But we don't know what the treasure is yet. We don't know who the well, we know that there's the artificer is like the boss of the ground level. But he's not actually interested in that, so we're shifting the narrative. We don't know the answer to this stuff yet. The only thing we do know the answer is that this is number 2 is the puzzle, and this is the coupling with the Sky Island. It's actually just a massive tower that is the control section, is the major control point for all the steam vents in the area, which we just talked about. So as we go through here, we're sussing out what each of these pieces are. And as you go to each of these areas, we can dive in again and build inside of this 1 mile space. We could then go in and build a separate, give me a second here. I'm almost done with my day, so give me a few moments here. We're about to be done for the day. But like, let's say we want to explore, like, yeah, let's explore this the steam vent control panel area, right? So let's build another 10 by 10 space here real quick. There, Bob's your uncle. And so this 1 mile space that this occupies, we can then zoom in, and this becomes the 1 mile square. And each one of these squares is a 500-foot space. So as we build our new dungeon, our 5-room dungeon for this space specifically, we can dive in. And we can use our number grid, right? So we use our 10 by 10 number grid to create coordinates, right? So I rolled a 7 and a 5, so I go across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Shit. There. 10 by 10. So I rolled a 7 and a 5. Merge that down. Good. So I go across 7 and I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a point. And then I do it again. 66. So 6 and 6. So here's the next point. And then I roll again. I roll a 7 and a 5. Okay, well I did that already. So let's do 5 and 7 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 7. Wow, look at this array. How crazy is that? And then we roll again. I get a 9 and an 8. So 9 and 8 is here. And then I roll again is 6 and 3. So 6 and 3. This is the arrangement of the 5-room dungeon that the steam vent control the steam vent control center is at here at point number 2 puzzle, right? And since it's a puzzle theme, we're going to be dealing more with ability checks and investing mana to turn on and off different things. So when we're building our dungeon here, we've got our 5 themes of treasure, boss, guardian, puzzle, and boss. So we still have the 5 rooms there that exist inside of this space. Now we're looking at the 500-foot scale, so we would like arrange these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to figure out what that array is. We'll determine how we would connect these different areas to each other, like that. Like maybe it's like that, so you can go here to here to here. Like this would be the shape of our dungeon. And then we can arrange what the things are in that dungeon. So if the team wants to take on the steam vent control panel, I would build a 5-room dungeon out of it, populate with monsters and hazards room by room for you guys to go in and beat up and throw mana around and solve problems or make alliances with stuff or whatever. So each of these, the 10-mile space creates 1 mile. This 10-mile space establishes 1 mile zones for all these different points, and then when we zoom into that 1 mile zone, we can then again zoom in at the 500-foot scale, and then like say this is the treasure area, so we could then again, if we wanted to, zoom in again to the 50. So now each of these squares is 50 feet. So inside the treasure zone, there's another 5-room dungeon that we build our 5 rooms and connect them. And now, like say we're in the boss fight area of the treasure zone that's inside of the puzzle, and the boss of the treasure zone, it might be, if the treasure is the actual control panel that turns off the seam vents, the boss fight that you might have to be might be like a security protocol system that will kill anyone that attempts to fuck with it if you don't disable the trap first. That becomes like, that's now a living spell that is going to protect the control panel that you want to have access to. You might have an arcane trickster on your team that would be able to operate, that would be able to manipulate the control panel from a distance, for instance. So you could get around that living spell guardian, that you don't have to touch the control panel. You can just use telekinesis to affect it, and you thus defeat that guardian. But that guardian exists and has to be contended with. So so once we actually get into that guard fight room, we're now operating at the 50-foot scale here, right? We're making a 10 by 10 space, and this is now 5-foot squares. So your character occupies a space here. Here's the control panel. Here's the doorway. Like, here's the actual chamber that you're inside of. Maybe there's another door that led off this way, and you came in through here. You had to pick a lock to get in here. The security protocol here. The guardian is, say, size large, and here's your characters in that 5-foot space as you come through the doorway. You now have to fight the guardian. Like, maybe there's like an electrical grid that it built to protect the actual power source. Like, maybe there's living spells that spawn from the corner over here. So this becomes your 50-foot battle map that you're actually fighting at the 5-foot scale inside of the switch chamber here, which is this is the actual switch chamber room inside of the steam vent area that's located here on the map. You see how we were able to scale down from 1 mile to 500 feet to 50 feet to 5 feet? We don't have to do that with every single room and every single zone, but as we go through this environment, your team is going to decide where your priorities are and what you want to achieve as you discover what are inside of each of these areas, and the areas that you want to pay specific attention to. That's how we can zoom in on these things. And I can be doing this during the adventure while we're doing stuff. I can be populating it. It's pretty easy for me to be able to generate this stuff and just have loose ideas of what's in the area that I can zoom into and start manipulating stuff at basically at any time that I need to. So that's the gist of how this system works. This scaling, this zooming in function. Like, I use this zooming effect in the Spelljammer book, but again, the practical application is that you can zoom in and zoom out to create different layers of dungeon spaces that help set the narrative of the places that your characters are engaging in. So anyway, like we go to the original map here. Like, this is a 30-foot map here, right? So if you take 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a 3x3 grid of this is basically a 100-mile space. Each of these squares is 10 miles. I just broke it up into 3x3s because it's easy to navigate in the 3s because of the amount of distance that characters can do per day. On a decent march, you can do a 30-mile day. So, but if you have a 3x3, that basically becomes a 100-mile block of area that we then zoom into. This then becomes in that 100-mile block, we're currently building a 10x10 block inside of that, right? So it'd be 10x10 of these, which we show on the map. So we go from the 5-foot scale out to the 10-mile scale. That's basically the scale of our X-Crawl system that we're building right now. And that's how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and cut stream here for now. This is the building. I'm going to go on Discord and on the Patreon to put out the official invitation for people to participate. And yeah, I'm going to be back. I'll be back on Monday morning to continue working on Eberron. I'll be back Monday night to continue working on Spelljammer. Tuesday, lunchtime, Tuesday morning we'll be back for Eberron. Tuesday lunchtime we're going to work on this some more, define what some of these rooms are. Wednesday morning Eberron. Wednesday lunch, maybe we'll work on this a little bit. We'll see. Thursday morning Eberron. Thursday night more Spelljammer. Friday morning more Eberron. Friday lunchtime more of this. Saturday stream a week from now we'll do more of this, and then Monday night, that will be the 29th. That's when we'll have our session 0 at 5 o'clock. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. This is where we're at. This is where we're going, and yeah. So there we go. Anything else? So the blue dots are the floating islands, but yeah. Okay, cool. So we're caught up. So that's it for today, guys. We're going to continue building this stuff out. We're starting to get a kind of a sense of a theme going on inside here. And yeah, this should be a lot of fun. So I will see you guys. I'll be back on Monday. See you then. And anyone that's interested in this stuff, I'll be on my Discord. There'll be I think there's already a link to it down inside here. Let's verify. Yep. Oh no, it's currently this on my community. If you go to the About page on my Discord, there's a permanent link here to my Discord. So there you go. All right, that's it. I'm out of here. I will catch you guys another time. Cheers.